Well. Here we are, folks. Playoff edition of After Hours, not how we had hoped and or anticipated this to be. Craig, not here. Unfortunately, was at that game. So he might call in. I don't know. But the man was in the stands and had to go through that debacle today. I'm okay with this podcast so far. I know we're only a couple seconds in, Jamie, or at least a minute or so, but it just feels like I don't know, man. It was an embarrassing performance from the Chargers, especially a Harbaugh-led Chargers. I know the future may be bright, and I know we can go back to that it was going to be a rebuild year, but they're just no sugarcoating it. They got absolutely boat raced today by a team on paper, as we went during our recap, is much less talented than the Chargers. Not like they're obviously a playoff team, so they're not bad, but it just feels like, I don't know. I couldn't imagine this happening, and it did. They lost on all three phases.
Yeah, I mean, they were outplayed and, dare I say, outcoached for the last three quarters of the game. They were not prepared at all. They didn't play well. They didn't execute. There were no answers for any of the things that Houston was doing to them on either side of the ball. There were just no adjustments. And of course, you get the shit cherry on top of Herbert playing probably his worst game as a pro, and opening up all those conversations about, is he a top quarterback? Can he win the big game? I want to be positive here, but I can't. I don't have any way to make this positive, and I can't spin it any other way. It was just bad.
Yeah. 4 interceptions. He had like a 40 passer rating today, a QB rating today. I know he had 4 sacks, and the O-line did not help him much at all today. But it kind of feels like all season and leading up to the season, it was like, who the hell do the Chargers have outside of Ladd McConkey? And today it was pretty clear it's nobody. It's not a single person. It's not Davis or Chark, or it's certainly not Quentin Johnston. Will Dissly was terrible today, even with the one, I think he had 2 catches today. Even with the catches he had today, he dropped 2 really easy passes today. It was Ladd McConkey versus the entire world today.
Yeah, it was. They don't have an easy button. It seemed like they were figuring things out, but even Ladd at times was having a hard time getting open. They couldn't get into a rhythm. It was tough to watch, man. I mean, then the defense played well for the better part of 3 quarters, I would say. They played pretty well. Yep. And then they were just on the field too long, and they got run off the field at the end of the game because they didn't have anything left to give.
When Herbert's turning it over at the clip he was, it's hard for your defense to recover.
Yeah, we got to address something here in the chat because I'm not in the mood to make excuses here. Okay. 2 Herbert INTs were objectively not his fault. Let's not forget that. 4th was desperation. I don't agree with that. I would say there was one.
Yes, the one he sailed over McConkey's head. Yes. Or I mean the Dissly ball.
The Dissly one that went through his hands and wound up being the pick 6.
Yes.
That was not on him. The one where he rolls right and throws back across his body to QJ was absolutely his fault.
Mm-hmm.
The one to Ladd where he stares Ladd down and then overthrows him was absolutely his fault. And the last one, you can call it desperation if you want to, but he underthrew that ball. Yep. Chark had a couple steps on Stingley. Stingley made a great play on the ball, but that ball's underthrown. If you lead, he had a clean pocket. If you lead Chark, who knows what happens with that?
Yep. And then the pick 6 was just another sailed throw.
Well, the pick 6 was the one that Dissly clanked off his hand.
Right. That's right. My bad.
Yeah, the pick 6 was one that clanked off of Dissly's hands. But yeah, I mean, 3 out of the 4 were absolutely his fault. You could look at it and say, he also had the miss to Ladd on the first drive, where if he hits that, it's probably a touchdown. Maybe that was the second drive. Disley drops one where I think he probably walks in for a touchdown if he catches it on 3rd and long. There were opportunities they had that they didn't cash in on, and then things just snowballed. When you don't take advantage of turnovers early in the game and short fields, you're really putting yourself in a hole. And that's what happened. They put themselves in a hole. They couldn't dig themselves out of it. And it just got worse as the game went on.
Yeah. It almost felt like the turning point was that kind of errant fumbled snap from CJ Stroud on a broken play that he was able to get a huge gainer down in the middle of the field. And it just felt like the Chargers just, I don't know. It deflated everything.
That whole drive was a turning point, and it actually started with not calling grounding on Stroud in the end zone. And to make matters worse, there was a clear hold on Fox in the end zone that should have made for a safety. So even if you don't get the grounding right, not calling the hold on Fox should have led to a safety and the Chargers getting the ball and likely a short field on a free kick. So that totally changed the game. And then you look at the way the rest of that drive pans out. Like, you get that errant snap, CJ rolls out, everybody's going for the football. You get 30 yards on 3rd and 18 or whatever it was. And then there was another hold later in that drive that wasn't called. And then what the kicker for me was, there was a completed pass and a clear fumble, and the officials blew it dead and didn't let it play out, which is what they're trained to do. That whole drive that got them started was fueled by the officials not doing their job. Now, that's not why they lost, because things got way worse from there, and they weren't able to dig themselves out of adversity. But that's what got them started, and all of those misses were blatant. I mean, there was a play where Tark got tackled from behind where he breaks through the line. You get that fumble, not called a fumble, with a clear recovery. That drive should have ended like 3 times, and it didn't. And that totally flipped the script on the game.
Yeah, there was some. It sucks the game went the way it did, because there were some really impressive plays defensively where it felt like they had 2 almost fumbles and recoveries. They almost had that pick in the end zone from Derwin. They got one from Dean Leonard. They got a fumble from when Alohi stripped it on the first play from the Texans. Tony Jefferson getting a strip, getting the ball. I mean, defensively, there were some really impressive aspects to it. And then it felt like the pass rush was getting home. We had Mack and Bosa getting sacks today. I felt like in coverage there was some good, but man, Christian Fulton today was just manhandled. I mean, that was a clear mismatch, and the Texans took it for 122 yards and 7 catches.
Yeah, how do you not go into that game putting a bigger body on Collins in Hart, and even like we talked about, bracketing him and just taking him away, just making somebody else beat you. But so many free releases, so many big cushions, just easy pitches and catches on quick slants in the middle of the field. They weren't prepared for that for whatever reason.
The wife brought me a beer, so she must have seen what happened during the game. That was good timing. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what their game plan was for him, because I mean, I think outside of that, it was the Hutchinson catch that was like 34 yards. Nobody else really had a good receiving game. And the run game was really, really good early on, late, obviously, they ran it down their throats. But there were some really, really good aspects defensively that it's a shame that we weren't able to really cover it. But Fulton, while having a hot start to the season, God, I mean, it's gonna be hard to wash this taste out of your mouth when watching Fulton and thinking about him in free agency, because, I mean, he just was absolutely bullied today.
I mean, 7 or 8 weeks into the season, we're talking about him being almost a guaranteed extension, and now you're looking at him like he had to have played his way. He had to have played his way out of a contract. Like, I don't see how you bring him back.
No. And I mentioned him a little bit earlier, but I mean, to to have the game he did against the Raiders, which is Quentin Johnston, to have the game that he did today, where he had 5 targets, but 4 or 5 of those balls hit him in the hands. The chicken shit short arm alligator arm catch at the end of that game, where he heard footsteps and short armed it and dropped it, just was brutal. The 4th down route where he does the pivot route short of the sticks. I mean, get him out of here, man. He was the target in that kind of jump ball, the first interception from Herbert, but I'm fucking sick of him, man. I don't care about any of his performances, the way he's made a jump or whatever it is. He's wide receiver 4 or 5 in any NFL roster.
Yeah, I mean, he had a big game last week, but otherwise he hasn't been steady, and he definitely folded today. I mean, that first interception was not his fault.
No.
That's a bad decision. We don't know necessarily what the play call was on the 4th down. I mean, you would like to assume the call was for him to run that route past the sticks, but then again, they rely on him to get yards after the catch. That's supposed to be his game. So maybe not. But if you're calling that play for him in that situation, and you're not asking him to get back past the sticks on 4th and 2, then you're not setting yourself up for success, because he's the least physical wide receiver, certainly on the team and maybe in the league. Like, he feels contact and he's done. So not a great call. I like the decision to go for it, but drawing up a play for him in that situation didn't make a lot of sense to me. And the play they drew up, at least the way it unfolded, didn't make a lot of sense to me either.
Yeah. I do want to, since we're talking about, 3rd and 4th down tries here, that at the very, very first drive on that 3rd and 1, where they got Zion pulling, was a terrible call. It just felt like that ignited just how it wasn't going to go very good today. When you got Zion pulling, getting there late, getting pushed back, a QB sneak there, or at least getting downhill is the easy matchup there. But then, then Zion, the very next drive, pulls on a blitz, misses Will Anderson. There's a sack, and they got to kick another field goal. It's like, and then he had another play where he basically just sat down and watched, I think it was Danico Autry, just run by his face and get all over Herbert. That was right before the touchdown pass to Ladd. Zion stinks, man. He was really, really bad today. And the play calls on those first 2 drives, I mean, I don't know what they're doing. Why they, on those 2 short fields, they needed a score there. And to get 6 points and then not score a single point after that, that's brutal.
I mean, the first drive was pretty good. They were marching down the field. They were running, power, duo, gap. They ran a trap that worked.
Sure.
They were having success. They were moving the ball in the air too. It seemed like, to me, even though they weren't scoring points early in the game, it felt like last week we were like, all right, well, they're moving the ball. They're kind of getting what they want. They're just not executing. They're going to figure it out, and they're going to put some points on the board. And they just never figured it out.
No,
It just became...
They regressed.
Yeah, it just became one of those games. They just never sorted out the execution. They were put in some bad holes with some predictable first down runs. The offense was just bad all around. I'm not sure how much of it was necessarily play calling. Justin was bad. He was not executing. I would love to understand why, especially early in the game when those edges are firing off the edge, and they were just like we talked about, they were super aggressive and they were over pursuing and they were not being very disciplined. There were lots of opportunities for Herbert to get out of the pocket, use his legs to pick up some first downs and keep the chains moving. And he chose to sit in the pocket. And I don't know why. I would love to understand exactly what happened there, because part of what was making this offense work the last few weeks was him using his legs in key situations. And he just looked like a statue, man. He looked like he was deer in headlights, frozen. And with the way he played the last 3 weeks, that was not something I would have had on my bingo card at all.
No, I thought he'd be moving a lot more. And also, I think I said they didn't score after that 6 points, but they obviously scored on that Ladd McConkey touchdown. And then that weird blocked extra point. I mean, they couldn't do anything right today on any phase.
It was like anything that could go wrong did go wrong
Yeah.
on both sides of the ball. I mean, poor execution up front, late on kick out blocks, Dicker batting that ball down, even though it's a live ball, instead of catching it and just going down with it.
Yeah.
Not that play didn't really make a difference in the game, but
No.
and then Mixon building a head of steam, just like we said he couldn't do, and getting into a rhythm on the ground. And they had, it seemed so good even when it was 10-6. Outside of that one drive, they had Stroud flustered. Like he was looking at the rush. He was making weird rainbow throws and putting the ball up for grabs. It seemed like they were in a position where they were going to be able to lock down Stroud and have some success on defense. And then they just lost it, and they couldn't get it back, and there were no adjustments and no answers for that.
Yeah. There was one note during this game, which was McConkey had the third most receiving yards in a playoff debut in NFL history, behind Calvin Johnson and Demaryius Thomas. So he had 197, almost had 200 yards today. And he had to, because there was nobody else that was going to contribute today.
Yep.
The next leading receiver was 16 yards from Will Dissly. That's how bad the receiving core was.
Yeah, I mean, nobody could get open.
No.
Nobody.
Or catch the ball, for that matter.
Or catch the ball. Yeah. I mean, does that game go differently if Dissly catches that third down play on the first drive and Herbert hits Ladd on the crosser on the second drive down in the red zone? Who knows? I mean, it's certainly a different feeling, right? But good for Ladd. I'm glad he put up those numbers. He had a great rookie season. I certainly outperformed what I expected of him when they drafted him, in a very different way. I was expecting a lot more short passes, screens, like high volume underneath, let him run with the ball. But he was making plays downfield all season, and he seems like a keeper as long as they can get themselves an X receiver and build out that wide receiver room to make it a lot more competitive versus man coverage.
Yeah. Do you know that Herbert didn't have a single run today?
I believe it. He never tried.
He was a statue today.
There were times where he looked, I don't know. I mean, uncomfortable from the rush for sure, but there were plays he made where he had opportunities to make plays with his legs. Like there was one play in particular where I forget when it was, but he had a clean pocket and Ladd was out to the right, and I think he ran like a comeback route. And instead of just throwing it, he like hopped like a bunny rabbit 3 times to his right and threw the ball late, and Stingley broke on it and broke it up. And I'm going, that does not look like Herbert's pocket movement. That's not how he manipulates the pocket at all. And he just looked, I don't know, kind of frozen. And I think, as much as I hate to say it, I think we have to have a discussion about who and what Justin Herbert is and what this is going to look like moving forward, with him as quarterback, because he has a lot to prove. This is now 2 playoff games where he couldn't put the game away. Mm-hmm. Again, the Jags game was more on the defense than it was on him, but a throw here or a throw there, and that's a different game. Mm-hmm. And today was just brutal. It was, he couldn't have played any worse.
No. Yeah. And it felt like, in Chargers teams past, Herbert had to be like almost superhuman. And this season, it felt like they had somewhat of a balanced attack throughout the season with the run game, and then, being able to complete timely passes and getting wins and then running the clock out late. But today it was like, I don't know who that was today. It didn't feel like he had much confidence. You want him to throw the ball, but 14 of 32, 4 interceptions today. It sucks because everybody's going to be talking about how he's, a nobody and he sucks and everybody's going to be talking about it. But I mean, if you look at the 2 playoff games, at least we know that he's a great quarterback in the regular season. I mean, we know he's a great quarterback, but in the playoffs now, it's 2 straight games where, Jacksonville, obviously this doesn't feel as bad as Jacksonville did. The defense gave up way too much, but Herbert couldn't get anything going later in that game either. And then here, when they needed him, I mean, he just fell apart.
Yeah, I just want to throw this up there. So I'm not saying it's all on Herbert, but I am saying that if he's the guy we think he is, then these are the games that he needs to step up in and find a way to make it work.
CJ Stroud found a way to make it work. He had Nico Collins and nobody else. So, if we're making the argument that Stroud won today, and he only had one wide receiver, and Herbert only had one wide receiver, and we saw that they just got beat by 20.
Yeah, I mean, the offensive line wasn't good. They didn't have a great wide receiver room, but that's been the case all season. So you're in the playoffs. You're in a very winnable game for the most part. I mean, it got away from them, but a play here, a play there from your quarterback, and you stay in that game. And he continued to turn the ball over. He was not comfortable. He didn't use his legs. He really looked out of sorts in every possible way. And it is the loss entirely on him? No, but he certainly could have done more. And if he is the quarterback we think he is, then he needs to elevate the team in those moments, and that hasn't happened yet. And I'm not saying they should cut him or they should trade him. Does the offensive line need to be improved? Absolutely. Do the wide receivers need to be improved? Absolutely. But there was no fight today, so that's a big problem.
Yeah, and we obviously haven't given up on Herbert, but I don't think he'll be able to shake this monkey off his back until he gets a playoff win. And it's going to be a storyline from here on out.
Yeah, and it should be wins aren't QB stats. That's not what we're saying. But it is what it is at this point. He's 0-2 in the playoffs. His team is 0-2 in the playoffs. And wins are not a QB stat. But until he shows that he can take a game over and win a game when the team needs it in the playoffs, then it's a fair conversation to have. And there were a lot of discussions being had in the Discord today about, is he still top 5? Is he top 10? Is he elite? Is he this? Is he that? I personally don't give a shit about top 5, top 10, top 15, whatever. I just want to win football games. And I think fans get too wrapped up in these arbitrary rankings from the media that frankly don't mean a goddamn thing. At the end of the day, what's important is winning football games, especially in January and December. So until he does that, it's a fair conversation to have. I'm not saying he sucks. I'm not saying they should cut him or trade him. I'm not saying he's not capable of doing these things, but we're going to have this conversation, and it's fair because you can point to guys like Brady, you can point to guys like Mahomes, you can point to guys like Josh Allen who are doing a lot with not very much, and say they're elevating their guys. Why isn't Herbert? And until he changes that, that's the conversation, and it's just a reality. I'm not saying, like I said, I don't hate the kid. I'm not saying anything about him other than we need to see him win a big game. I don't think that's unfair.
No. And I think it's also fair to say he did not have a good game today. I don't know I don't know about this, carry the O-line, Roman and both their family trees at 12 points. I get that. I get that he had a lot on his back, but I mean, they just got boat raced by, in my mind, a pretty inferior team. It just felt like while we watched these games, Chargers were on the trek. They were ascending, and the Texans were reeling. They were limping into the end of the season, and then they got their asses handed to them, embarrassed in the playoffs. So, until he gets that win, I think that's going to be a conversation, not just from us, but everybody else.
Yeah. And I don't think it's unfair.
No.
He is just as open to criticism as anybody else. We all want to see him succeed. We all love the guy, and he makes plays all the time in the regular season. He's got to take that next step. And I think he will, most likely, with the coaching. But he looked like the game was too fast for him and too big for him today. And that's something they got to address.
Okay, so a lot of people already getting into off-season talk. Let's touch on this because everybody's going to ask it. Roman did not have his best game today. I think that's fair to say. When the lights were brightest. Do you think they get rid of Roman in the offseason?
No, I don't. And
I don't.
again, I would kind of have to go back and watch film to say he didn't have his best day because it's hard to tell from the broadcast feed exactly what's going on with play calling. Were there some bad play calls? Absolutely. But I'm not sure it's all on him. I mean, the offensive line was not good. They couldn't run the ball. Nobody but Ladd could get open. So I have to go back and look. Did he do things to beat man coverage? I don't know if he did or not because it was hard to tell on the broadcast. But no,
But
they're not
even
going to fire him.
but even with that said, it's not like he was so bad today that you even have that conversation. It feels like I know Roman and Harbaugh are buddies, but also when you think about the state of this offense and the fact that they're able to get them to the playoffs, I think that bodes well for Roman to at least give him another year and to try it out. Everybody has talked about how this was going to be a rebuild year and whatnot. But if you look at what they had and how far they got, it just feels like from a resume standpoint and probably in Harbaugh's mind and even Spanos's mind, they probably keep Roman and let him at least get another year to try to figure it out.
Yeah, I think they'll give him another year. I think he earned, I don't want to say a free pass, but he earned a bit of a hall pass because of the way the end of the regular season played out with some of the adjustments he made in the regular season to get them to this point. They went away from their normal philosophy, and they were passing the ball more and they were trying to open things up more, and it worked.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as they continue to add offensive linemen and wide receivers, I think, I think he will be better. Could he have been better today? Yeah, but I don't. They're not going to fire him.
Do you think, from Rodney Johnson, also thank you for the donation, do you think the fires had an effect on this game with the lack of practice?
It's
hard to say.
It's hard to say. You don't know how it affects these guys emotionally. But I mean, to me, like, they know the game plan. They know what they're going to do. Maybe you wind up watching some extra film. It's kind of like a pseudo week of rest almost. You'd like to think it gets you healthy. They just got beat, man. They just got whipped, and I don't know if it was fire related or they just walked into a buzzsaw that they weren't ready for. I don't know, but they got whooped bad, and I don't want to make excuses.
Yeah. And then also there's questions about Minter. Obviously he's back again. But you gotta believe that like head coaching, at the beginning of the year it was like, oh, he's probably going to get head coaching interviews. I don't know that comes around this year.
I don't think so. I still think there's going to be kind of a hesitation to hire defensive coordinators unless they've been in the position for a while. I think there's going to be a rush to offensive coordinators. So I really don't think that they're going to fire that Minter is going to get head coaching interviews. I don't think he's going anywhere. I think they've got him for at least one more year.
Yeah. All right. So a lot of people asking us about free agents and let's talk about this offensive line. So obviously Slater and Alt are good and happy with the bookends. Do you think is a clean sweep inside? Do you think they give Zion another chance? What do you think? What do you think they do in the interior?
I think you don't want to overreact too much to one game. And my hunch is they're probably thinking that if they can upgrade either center or right guard or both, that having a competent center in there flanking Salyer and Zion probably helps him play better, because in my opinion, he had played better down the stretch than he had earlier in the season. It was not good today
It was
by
terrible
any stretch. But I think you give him another chance as a first round pick. They had a lot of faith in him. Granted, it was a different regime, but it's hard to replace 3/5 of your offensive line in one offseason. So I think you give him another chance and you look to replace center for sure and potentially right guard, if not at least create some competition there.
Yeah. Yeah, it does feel like it's hard to do a clean sweep of the interior in one offseason. I don't know that that's the case, but I wouldn't mind it. But yeah, I think you're probably looking at a center. I think they're probably going to do something in free agency, probably fill 2 of those spots in the draft and then 1 in free agency and at least create competition for Zion. I don't think he gets a free pass, but I do feel like they got to. Bozeman can't be back. Salyer, Pipkins. I mean, while Salyer can be, depth, I don't know that you can bring back Pipkins and do that again.
No, Pipkin's got to go. And then you slide Salyer in. You bring in some competition on the interior to see if Salyer can beat somebody else out for that spot. And you definitely have to replace Bozeman. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. Now, what about the edge rushers? Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa took a pay cut. Do you think either of them come back? Are they both gone? One of them? What's your feeling right now? And do you know Khalil Mack hasn't won a playoff game?
I mean, he was a Raider forever and a Bear.
So
that doesn't really surprise me.
Yeah.
Do they both come back? I would say no. If they had to choose one, I think it's probably Mack. But I think both of their play declined throughout the season. Mack, in my opinion, while he had flashes, I think he started to show his age a little bit. But I think you get a level of leadership with him that you need. And that's why if they bring one of them back, it's probably him. I don't see Joey coming back. I think they cut him to save the money. And I think that's the move that you have to make. With the injuries, I don't see Joey, even if they cut him, I don't see him coming back on any kind of a deal where he takes less money. I think he'll go somewhere else, maybe to San Francisco to play with his brother. But I just don't see. I'd be surprised if Joey came back.
Yeah, I don't know that he's got it anymore, to be honest with you. I guess he might give it one more try, but I don't know that he plays much longer. He just does. I mean, he does not look like the same Joey Bosa we've seen. I know he had a sack today, and a lot of that came from interior pressure. Kind of walked him right into Bosa's lap. But yeah, I don't know. I think Bosa's gone, and I think if anybody comes back, it's Mack, who, yeah, I think was good through spurts, kind of fell off towards the end of the year, had a pretty good game today. But I mean, yeah, he's getting up there. Maybe one more go, but yeah, I don't see Bosa back. Probably the least likely of the group.
Yeah, I would say that's a fair assumption. I'd be surprised if he came back.
Okay. Do you want me to pull up do you want to go through a quick they'll be back, won't be back type of scenario?
Sure, why not?
Okay. All right. Bleacher Report just posted their unrestricted free agents. So can you see that or you need it bigger?
Can you make it bigger?
Yeah.
Actually,
hold on. I got you. Okay.
All right.
First up, Bradley Bozeman. We already talked about it. He's gone.
Yeah.
DJ Chark?
Gone.
J.K. Dobbins,
I'd say 50-50. I probably would not bring him back at his age with his leg injuries, but he did play well, so you can make an argument for it.
Yeah, I think they're getting a running back in the draft. Troy Dye?
I think he's gone. We were discussing this in the Discord this week, and in my opinion, I know he's valuable on special teams. I think he got picked on a little bit today. I don't think he's so good that you have to bring him back. And I think it's time to start looking at younger linebackers who can play special teams and maybe ascend into a starting role. And I just don't think Dye is that guy.
Yeah, I don't feel like Dye makes a ton of sense, especially when you're going to try to roll out Junior Colson here soon. He's probably going to have a bigger role in year 2. As a special teams guy, bottom of the depth chart guy, I don't mind it. I wouldn't hate it if they did that. But Yeah, I think he's gone. Zeke can't be back. That's crazy.
No, he's gone. Yeah,
Simi Fehoko, I don't think he's back.
I don't think so.
Puna Ford, you got to bring back.
He's got to come back.
Yeah. He was amazing this year, by the way. Unsung hero.
Mm-hmm.
Really loved Puna Ford.
And he was really, really good today.
Oh my gosh, he was so good today.
Yeah. Difference maker on that line for sure.
What about Morgan Fox? Kind of a pretty big fall off this year.
I would say he probably doesn't come back. I think they need some more beef in the middle. He's not very big. He's not really good against the run. He wasn't terribly productive in pass rush for most of the year. Short of like a really big pay cut, I don't see the point in bringing him back. I don't think it's a necessity.
Yeah, I think this is I think it's time to let him walk. I really loved what he contributed early on, especially when they signed him as a free agent. Was another guy who's kind of an unsung hero of that D line, which was pretty poor the last few years. But yeah, I think they're going to want to get much beefier, and they'll have plans for a Boybe, I'm sure, coming up in year 2. But
I hope so.
Yeah, I know. To be an inactive almost all season was crazy for your 3rd round pick, but that is what it is. Christian Fulton, we talked about a little bit earlier, kind of played himself out of a contract. I say no.
I agree. Yeah, I don't think he comes back.
Yeah, not with the ascension of these 2 rookies with Hart and Still. Taylor Heineke, I'd love to have back.
Yeah, I'd bring him back.
Yeah, me too. Hayden Hurst, he could leave.
He can go.
Yep. Brendan Hymus. Oh, a name you almost forget about.
He's yet another. What was that guy's name? I already blew the joke. Mark Webb.
Oh, Mark Webb.
He's a figment of our imagination.
Right. Yeah. So no to Brendan Hymus. You can find those kind of interior guys anywhere. Khalil Mack, we talked about already. I thought he doesn't have a year left on his contract.
No, I don't think so.
No. Okay. Bosa does. Mack doesn't. Okay. Marcus May, no. What about Elijah Molden?
I would consider it. I would say it would have to do a lot with his outlook with his injury and when he's going to be back and if he's going to be back. But you could definitely see a huge difference in that secondary with him on the field versus when he was not on the field. So, yeah, if he's going to be back in time to play and you think he's going to be healthy, then he's somebody that I would consider bringing back because he shouldn't cost too much. He should be able to contribute on special teams, and he was really, really good in that secondary for them.
Yeah. You can't have enough DB depth, and Elijah Molden's one of those guys you'd love to be as a versatile piece, kind of a glue guy towards the middle end of your roster. And yeah, this team was much better when Elijah Molden was in. Nick Niemann, he could go.
I mean, I'd be fine with him going. I don't have an overwhelming need to keep him, but he does add value on special teams. And if Dye is not going to come back, and when we talk about Perriman, if he's not going to come back, then you need some linebacker depth. I don't think you want to go into the offseason with just 2 linebackers. So he may be a guy that you keep around just for special teams value and depth and just kind of see what happens. Kind of like that Damian Square signing they always used to have where they'd wait and they'd bring him back and then eventually they filled the position and they cut him.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what you're looking at for Niemann. So potentially, yes. I don't have a strong feeling about it either way, but from a special teams value and just from depth, I think it might make some sense to bring him back. So you're not totally bare in that room going into the offseason.
Sure. Feels like they might need to draft another linebacker. If you're looking at a day 3 linebacker, I feel like that could be filled pretty easily with a Nick Niemann type. I'm not banging my head against the wall if they bring him back.
No,
there's obviously some special teams value. Joshua Palmer, I'm letting him go.
Well, here's the thing: is I don't think he's going to cost much because he has not been.
Oh, we can't
productive. Is he somebody that you bring back as like wide receiver for depth?
That feels like QJ right now.
Well, they're both in a similar position.
Okay.
But if you let Simi walk and you let Chark walk, it's kind of like the same issue with the linebackers, right? And then you let Palmer walk. Now you're going to the offseason needing to find 3 to 4 new wide receivers in one offseason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Where's the problem? I'm waiting for you to. Where's the argument? That's exactly what you want. Yeah.
Wouldn't you rather go into the offseason looking to replace 3 instead of 4?
Well, I mean, a numbers game, sure, but I want, I want better receivers. I'm tired of
Yeah, no, I mean, they definitely need to get better at wide receiver.
it.
Maybe on a 1-year deal with him,
Mm.
low risk. I don't know. Just so you're not totally bare. I mean, they're already totally bare,
Yeah.
but they should carry 6 next year, I hope. And going into the offseason needing 4 wide receivers is a little scary, but they do need to reinvent that room.
Yeah. I feel like if you sign a wide receiver, like a high end wide receiver, and then you sign a depth wide receiver of the Chark type, and then you go in and draft a wide receiver, I think you're doing pretty good. And then after that, you just fill with whatever you got.
All right, you convinced me.
Okay, Denzel Denzel Perryman.
I mean, he had a lot of value for the Chargers in the running game, and you could definitely feel it when he was off the field. But he's always off the field, so he's a guy who is well. I thought he signed a 2-year deal. Didn't he sign a 2-year deal?
I will. I'll look it up.
I could have sworn he did, but I could be wrong. Anyway, he's a guy who, he's a veteran. He's been around for a long time. He adds some value to the room from a leadership standpoint, but he's just never available. So he's somebody that I think it shouldn't be that hard to find a run stuffing linebacker.
It was 1 year.
Was it? Okay.
Yep. 1 year, $2.3 million. It's a pretty good deal for Denzel Perryman, who really contributed in the run game. Yeah, man, if you're talking another 1 year, $2.3 million, I don't mind that again. I mean, he's older, but you could obviously get better. Chris Rumpf can go. I mean, that string bean can go. Now, here's a very interesting name. Asante Samuel Jr.
I'm going to assume he's gone because there's just something, and I don't know. I'm speculating here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm totally speculating, but something just feels really off about his shoulder injury. Like he hurt his shoulder and he ceased to exist to the team to the point that Harbaugh would barely answer questions about him. And that makes me think there was something going on. I don't know if it was family related. I don't know if it was mental health related, if they found another health issue when they examined his shoulder. I don't know. And it may be nothing, but something about that situation is very off to me. And for that reason, I have to think that the team has decided he doesn't fit, because with all the issues they had at cornerback in the middle of the season and the guys they were bringing off the street, if he was healthy and they trusted him, I think he would have been out there. So something is off.
They had a playoff game and a chance to bring him back, and they did not. Something is awry for sure. And I don't want to speculate on how bad the injury was, but it took a lot of time to heal, and there was never any progress about how his recovery was going. And he basically just wore his shirt and sat on that sideline, and nobody even asked him any questions, and he just was fine doing it. He's probably not in their style. He's not a very good physical corner that they're looking for, like the guys they drafted. So the tackling issues early on in the season, it felt like his job was almost going to get taken by a rookie anyway. So I would say he's probably not back.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. J.K. Scott.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, he can go.
I'm done.
Easton Stick can get
He's gone. Yep.
Out of here. Get somebody else. And I would absolutely bring back T.R. Tart.
I would. He was really, really good. He's another guy who was outstanding today. And you add like a true nose tackle in there and maybe have Tart and Ford play some 3 technique. Maybe have one of them play some defensive end at times. I think you can put together a pretty good defensive line rotation if you start with those 2 guys.
Yeah. Okay. If anybody else, that's it for the list. Yep. Oh, definitely bring back Stone Smart, but these are easy. The restricted free agents. They probably bring back Sorrell just
they'll
as
bring both
camp.
those guys back.
Yeah.
Yeah, just that's like, well, I wonder. They're both probably restricted because I don't know why that they have restricted and exclusive rights
Yeah.
lumped together. But I feel like Sarrell's been in the league for 3 years, and this was Smart's third year, so they should both be going into restricted free agency. Sarrell, they should be able to keep. I mean, procedurally, like those are guys. Smart's the one guy that you might want to protect. Maybe even it seems rich, but maybe even with a second round tender. Sarrell is a guy who I feel like you can let walk and bring him back for less than the restricted tender. The what do they call it? Right of first refusal tender.
Uh-huh.
I think you could bring him back for less than that. Maybe take the money he would make on 1 year on that deal and split it among 2 years, kind of like they did with Parham last year.
Yeah. And they're both restricted. I just checked.
Are they? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right. If you guys got any questions, we'll go ahead and stop that. Send them in. We're pretty much wrapped up here. Is there anything left to mention about this game? I don't know that we need to go back there, but
I don't want to talk about that game anymore.
All right. So from James Heritage, good. Do you think we're more likely to draft a wide receiver high or sign a high-end wide receiver in free agency?
I would say probably sign a high-end free agent wide receiver. That's my guess. I think they got their guy in the draft last year. They'll draft an X wide receiver to complement him and fill in with mid and late round picks with wide receivers. And my guess is they focus on the line of scrimmage early in the draft.
Yeah. Kind of feeling like it's offensive line. It just feels like they're gonna need it, and it's how they want to build their teams. So you don't want to complain about it because we always talk about building in the trenches. So I think signing a high end wide receiver is something that's probably high on their list in free agency. I know T. Higgins is the name everybody's looking at, but it just feels like they're going to need to get somebody in free agency anyway. And with the way they were able to get so much out of Ladd in the second round, kind of feels like they will be able to do that kind of probably in the second, day 2, day 3 for some contributors and wide receivers.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go. I got to throw this up there.
Oh, okay.
Because I can't believe what I'm seeing.
Oh, my God. Make him the cornerstone safety next to Derwin for the foreseeable future. He's kidding. That's not a real thing.
I think he's serious.
Dave, please say you're kidding. No way. I know he got that strip, but he was flat-footed today. I did not like him much at all.
Dave, we love you. Thank you for the support. We're a little worried about you.
Yep.
Do we need to have an intervention for Dave? Do we need to find some meds for him? I'm not sure. But yeah, hard pass on that.
Yeah, to say make him the cornerstone safety next to Derwin, he's got to be.
He's kidding.
Joking.
He already said he's kidding.
Oh, good.
But I wanted to carry out the bit. So.
Oh, good. All right. John, just a quick shout out to say thanks for all the efforts during the year. Of course. Thank you so much. Nathan Harrison. Thanks for watching, John. Appreciate you. What's the number one priority for you both this offseason? One position, Jamie.
One position?
Yeah.
Are we talking free agency or are we talking the draft?
Okay, let's say what's your biggest goal in free agency and the draft? Let's go 1 and 1. One position.
I can't believe I'm going to say this because I've always said that I don't like this philosophy in terms of building a team, but I would say free agency, I would go out and find a high-end wide receiver, and in the draft, I would focus on the interior offensive line.
That's exactly what I was going to say. And we say it every year. Don't invest in those wide receivers or running backs. And here we go. We want a high end wide receiver. Let's see. What do you think here, Jamie? Do you think that we should consider the Chargers should consider trading Justin Herbert for JJ McCarthy?
No.
For the bet?
We don't know who JJ McCarthy is going to be. So I would say no.
And this is a bet, obviously. What do you think? Do you think it's going to be a wide receiver or a tight end with the higher pick? Who gets drafted first, a wide receiver or a tight end?
Who gets drafted first? I would say probably a tight end.
By the Chargers.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
I would say probably a tight end because they affect the line of scrimmage and the passing game in multiple ways. Yeah, that'd be my guess. Is probably not in the first round, but if we're talking about which position they use a higher pick on, I would say tight end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so too. How do you guys feel about giving Vidal a bigger role?
I don't think we've seen anything from Vidal to suggest that he deserves that.
Yes.
I think this team needs to take a running back somewhere between rounds 3 and 5. They don't have the personnel right now to run the ball the way they want to, and if they're able to upgrade the offensive line, then they need to upgrade their running back in the draft.
Yeah, I don't know that giving him we did not see enough from him this year to say, hey, yeah, he's got to be getting RB2 snaps. I mean, we'll just see during training camp, but he was fine, and I expect big things from him. Maybe year 2 he'll hit his stride. Overall, from Russ 99A, overall, do you expect any assistant coaching changes this offseason other than a slight chance on Roman?
I don't think there's any chance they change Roman. You could make an argument for potentially bringing in a new offensive line coach, but I'm not sure how much the offensive line coach could do with the personnel they had. If there are changes, it might be because guys get hired away. Like I could see Clinksdale getting hired away for a bigger role. Navarro Bowman, somebody that they could get hired away for a bigger role. Mm-hmm. So there, you could see some turnover in terms of guys moving on for larger roles, but I don't think they're going to fire anybody. 11-6 in year 1 with the personnel they had and all the shortage they had of talent up front. I think these coaches coached the hell out of these guys today, notwithstanding, and there's no reason to be making sweeping changes.
Yeah. I don't think there's going to be much wiggle room unless somebody again if there is somebody that gets hired off or gets a promotion. I think everybody's going to stay intact, including Roman. I just don't see Roman going at all. Okay. Let's see. So what about corner from GS? And I promise it's not me. What about cornerback? So Hart still going to be back next year. What do you do to fill in for, Zont / Fulton?
Cornerback is a huge need. They're probably going to need to sign like a number 1 or number 2 corner in free agency and then find a couple of corners in the draft. So, and definitely attack depth for sure. Corner is a position that's been a position of need, just looking at the depth chart and when guys' contracts were expiring for 2 years, and they've kind of attacked it with Band-Aids. Mm-hmm. Now they need long-term solutions, like no more Fulton. They need a true number 1. I'm worried about Hart at this point. 3 concussions in 1 year? 4 concussions in 1 year? Yeah. I'm really worried about him. I don't know how long he's going to last. He just seems like anytime he gets hit, he's down with a concussion. Mm-hmm. So they need to find depth and they need to find difference makers in the secondary.
That's exactly right. They got to find somebody. They're going to be down a lot of guys, especially from that bringing back Fulton and Zont. And Yeah, I worry about Hart too, and I know he went down today, and the game kind of shifted too when he went down with the hand, but really banged up this year. And yeah, I'm a little concerned. They're gonna have to get a lot of depth at corner this
Yeah.
offseason.
The broadcast said he hurt his shoulder, but you could tell he took a head-to-head hit, and he looked like he was out of it after that hit. So really worried about his head. That's a little scary.
Yeah. Giuliano, do you feel the offense catered to the lack of offensive weapons and they'll adjust to it next year with a proper tight end and another receiver? I sure hope so.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think they knew going in that they were short on talent, particularly at wide
Yeah.
receiver and
You
tight
can't
end.
watch this game and not have huge red flags from this wide receiver room and tight end room. I mean, it is so abundantly clear that if they had another wide receiver and a pass catching tight end, this is a totally different game, and they might be making a run right now.
Yep.
It changes everything. No way they bring back Keenan for a prominent role, right?
I don't think so. No, I mean, it seemed like the relationship ended poorly last year with the way they asked him for a pay cut and didn't offer him a raise after a career year. So yeah, I don't think there's any way he comes back, and I don't think they should bring him back. I'm never a fan of nostalgic signings, and in my opinion, bringing Keenan back, that's a nostalgic signing. That's taking a step backwards in terms of roster building, in my opinion.
Oh, Craig's in the chat. This is the saddest Uber ride of all time. Damn, man. You should be in here talking shit with us.
The saddest part of this is Craig had to watch. Craig was in the stadium with his son, and his son probably had to watch Craig cry for 4 quarters.
Yeah.
So, painful day, man, all the way around. Painful day. Hopefully you found a way to have fun with Colin, though.
I'm sure he found a way to have fun with his son, but yeah, I would say having your son watch you cry for 4 quarters is probably a tough look, and something his son will probably never forget.
For all the wrong reasons, unfortunately.
TH wants to know about off-season content. How often will we see you guys in the off-season? A bunch.
A lot. We haven't sat down and put the schedule together yet, but we've got all the usual stuff. We've got free agency to go through, all of the internal signings, external signings, draft, all that stuff. So we got to figure out how we're going to make that work, but we'll be releasing that soon, I think.
We do it every year. We find a way, and we'll do it again. And make sure you jump in the Discord, because that's when we'll get all of our rumor stuff of free agents they're looking at and draft intel and all that other stuff. So make sure you're part of the Patreon. Go join the Discord. It'll be an exciting time. I know this loss sucks, but we got stuff to look forward to. A bright future ahead, I'm sure. Okay, we'll take a couple more and then we'll hop off here. From DJ Blade Runner, thoughts on the Tyreek Hill stuff?
I assume he's talking about Hill saying he's out. He wants out. I've seen people speculate he might come here. How old is he?
Feel about it? I will look it up. How do you feel about him?
As talented as that guy is, and I'm sure 30. He would help his passing offense. 30 years old. He's super expensive. I don't think he's tradable with his contract. I think the majority of his contract is guaranteed this year, if I'm not mistaken. So that guy's just a headache. Like, he's never happy. Seems like he's always in some kind of trouble. That's something I would steer clear from. I don't think that's good for culture.
He has a $28 million cap hit, $28.6 million cap hit, and you have an out in 2026. But he's got 28.6 in 2025 and 51.8 in 2026. They backloaded that contract. And boy, do I hate backloaded contracts. Yeah, that's a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, for sure. That's a lot of money. How much of that 28 million is guaranteed?
Let's see. 30. He's got a His base is 10 million. The signing bonus is 6.5 with the restructure roster. Looks like it's fully guaranteed. If
That's
I'm
what I
looking at this
thought.
right.
Yeah. That's going to be a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah.
Even with whatever it is, $75 million in cap space, that's going to be a tough pill to swallow.
Okay. If from Robert Clark, if the Chargers draft a center, do you trust them to start?
I mean,
you have to.
Yeah, unless you bring in veteran competition, which they should do. I mean, it depends on where you draft him, who he is. I mean, ideally, yeah, you trust him, but who knows what that looks like, who it is, or we don't know. So if they take him early, then yeah, you're probably looking at him starting.
So, and I'm pretty sure that Rosenhaus and Hill had a sit down with the Dolphins, and I think they're okay now. But anyway, just going back to Tyreek Hill. John Taylor, what do you realistically do with QJ next year? Ideally, you trade him, but would you want a guy with Teflon hands? You're not trading him. He's untradeable. Nobody wants him. You're stuck with him.
You're stuck with him, and you have to figure out a way to make the best possible use of him when he's on the field. Hopefully, you build out that wide receiver room in a way that he's wide receiver 4, maybe 3 at absolute best, and you're not having to lean on him to make consistent plays.
Okay. All right. Last one. What picks from James Heritage? What picks would you be comfortable trading for Garrett Wilson, another guy who is unhappy in New York?
And another guy who seems like he's a headache. Like lots of complaining, lots of calling out teammates. Another guy who may not be great for culture.
I don't really blame him with Rodgers, but go ahead.
Fair point. Fair point. I would say
is a second too rich? You're not going to get you're not going to trade your first round pick. Is a second, because they're drafting in like the 19-20 range now.
Maybe a second with some pick swaps on the back end, something like that.
Yeah, I could do a second for Garrett Wilson. He's so talented. He might be a headache, but I think he'd be worth it, especially on a rookie deal. I'd take him. Okay, all right. Well, that's going to do it for us. Everybody, big turnout today. Not the way any of us wanted to do this. We did not want to get on here and do this, but we appreciate you joining us, and you made it a little bit better. So thanks for joining us all season long. We appreciate you guys so much. It's been a very long season for me in general. A lot of stuff going on, but you stuck with us. Jamie helped pick me up, so I just want to say, I know Craig's probably in the chat too. I just want to give a big shout out as the season comes to a close. Shout out to Jamie and Craig, who had to pick me up, who was because I was out a lot this season, and the content is still just as good. So I appreciate you guys. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, everybody else, for joining us. Pretty impressive season for the first year of the Harbaugh regime, getting 11 wins. But most importantly, it's the best to hang out with you guys and for you guys to join us. So thank you very, very much.
Yep. Thank you, everybody. And we will see you next time.
All right. Craig, salute.